for news from where it's being made, gathered by Network Radio's largest news staff. Here is News Around the World, brought to you by Pennzoil Motor Oil. Now, from New York for American Information Radio, here is correspondent Bob Walker.
Good morning. This is launch day for America's Skylab astronauts, with blastoff now less than 1 hour away. For the latest, we go to ABC correspondent Merrill Muller at the Kennedy Space Center.
Skylab 2 is all ready to go with the first astronaut crew for the Crippled Space Laboratory. The weather is gray but clearing. The countdown runs smoothly. Astronauts Conrad, Kerwin, and Weitz are in good spirits in their final systems checks. The Skylab workshop will pass overhead here at Cape Kennedy about 10 minutes before Conrad's launch time. The workshop will be east of Philadelphia when Skylab 2 lifts off about 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Merrill Muller, ABC News, Cape Kennedy.
You can hear live coverage of the liftoff 1 hour from now over many of these American Information Network stations.
Well, the countdown going smoothly for this morning's liftoff from Cape Kennedy in the delayed second phase of Skylab project. The liftoff in just 29 minutes, and they are counting. The spacemen's mission is to repair the troubled space station that has been whirling around the Earth for the past 11 days with heating problems.
For this launch, if they don't get off by 9:10, it means that they will not go today, because by that time Skylab up there 270 miles away and hurtling along at 17,400 miles an hour would be too far away for them to catch it within the next day or so. So they don't want to waste all that fuel trying to catch up. They wouldn't go today. They would instead probably go tomorrow. There's an announcement from Mission Control coming up.
In the spacecraft, the final actions to be taken there will be at the T-minus 4 minute mark. Paul Weitz will turn on the spacecraft batteries, and at T-minus 45 seconds, the last action to be taken by the crew will be taken by Pete Conrad when he makes a final guidance alignment. We're coming up now to the 5 minute mark. At that time, the swing arm number 9, will come back to the full retract position. Actually, for the Saturn 1B, there are only 5 swing arms. The number 9 designation comes from the earlier launches using this same mobile launcher, using the Saturn 5. The swing arm now coming back to the full retract position. It will remain in that full retract position now for the rest of the countdown. At T-minus 3 minutes and 7 seconds, the count will go on the automatic sequencer and will be carried out automatically from that time on. Now T-minus 4 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. This is Kennedy Launch Control.
Wally, one of the incredible things out here today is the lack of public excitement. There was no crowd. It was easier to get out here this morning than it is on a normal day. Look at the VIP site over there, the other side of the vehicle assembly building. There are very few people there. Ed Rabel is over there and reports that barely a third of the seats are occupied in the VIP section. There are no campers out on the roads coming out here. It's just incredible. This thing is being kept almost as big a secret as the Watergate bugging. More people may know about that than this, as a matter of fact. However, perhaps that's a tribute in itself to the space program and the fact that people don't get excited about man going into space and orbital space, particularly these days.
Well, we always revealed our secrets in the past. That may be one of the
That's right. 3 minutes and 45 seconds in the countdown. Wally, these pilots these astronauts have any great trepidation because of the change in the nature of their mission?
No, in fact, I think this is the part we like, Walter. You go back to being a hotshot test pilot, you'd like to get in there and do something with the vehicle. And at this point in time, I'm sure they're feeling this great anticipation. Many people always say, well, how do you feel before launch? And this is where we say, well, we've done enough training now, let's go do it. So I think their anticipation is at a high peak. They know they've bought the booster swing arm was brought back, so now they own that spacecraft.
I imagine that, as a matter of fact, they kind of got excited about having something more to do than they expected.
I'm sure. Has
Mission Control.
Now on the automatic sequencer, and the countdown will be run now by that automatic sequencer. A number of functions are carried out by the sequencer, and they must be carried out in the proper order, or they would be automatically shut down. Also, at the same time, the launch crew here in the firing room will continue to monitor their various readouts, temperatures, checking the gauges for pressures and rates. They could override the sequencer if necessary. At the T-minus 3 minute and 6 second mark, the automatic sequencer terminated the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen replenishing. These cryogenic fuels had been being replenished since fueling was actually completed early this morning. After this termination, the fuel tanks will be pressurized. Actually, pressurization has now started. The second stage liquid oxygen tank has now been pressurized, and the first stage fuel tank also has been pressurized. Now passing the 2-minute mark in the countdown, the vents closing, and the pressurization is taking place on the 2 stages of the Saturn 1B. At the T-minus 1 minute, 15-second mark, Paul Weitz will trip 2 switches in the command module, placing the spacecraft batteries online. These batteries will give added support to the fuel cells and also act as a backup to the fuel cells. Fuel cells also online at this time. T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds and counting. And our countdown continues to go smoothly.
Incidentally,
also, during the automatic sequence,
not see that long liftoff with this rocket. There's only about 3 seconds between the time the engine's light and it goes, instead of 9 seconds with Saturn 5, that is. And you might also be aware that if by any chance from downrange here with those long-range cameras at Patrick Air Force Base, they get a picture through the clouds, so that's a big if. And with this heavy cloud cover, we should see separation 1.5 minutes after launch.
In Skylab.
What hasn't changed, my hands are moist this time, Walter.
T-minus 50 seconds and counting, and we are now going to internal power. All stages switching to internal power. Stages now and fuel tanks pressurized. Approaching the 30-second mark in the countdown. At 30 seconds, water will begin spraying on the deck of the mobile launcher. T-minus 30 seconds, and the countdown continuing to go smoothly. The Skylab itself orbiting some 780 nautical miles northeast of KSC at this time. T-minus 17 seconds and counting. T-minus 15. At T-minus 3.1 seconds, we'll expect the engine sequence to start on the vehicle. T-minus 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Engine sequence start. 2, 1, 0. We have launch commit and we have liftoff. The clock is running, and Skylab has cleared the tower.
Tower in Houston, Skylab 2. We fix anything. We got a pitch and a roll program.
Houston is now controlling.
The thrust is going all engines. It's a slow little plane.
Is that a smooth ride?
25 seconds, pitch and roll program started. Skylab now maneuvering to its proper flight path attitude. Mark 35 seconds, 1 nautical mile in altitude. Green by range safety. Mark 45 seconds, cabin pressure relieving, adjusting now from sea level to a space environment. Mark 50 seconds, 2 nautical miles in altitude.
And roll is complete, Houston.
Roger. Stand by for mode 1 Bravo. Mark, mode 1 Bravo.
Roger, propellant up is RCS command.
Roger.
Mark 1 minute 8 seconds, roll program complete.
Skylab Houston, your feet wet.
Roger, feet wet.
That call up from Capcom Dick Truly says Skylab now capable of water landing. 1 minute 20 seconds, passing through the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. 1 minute 25 seconds, 8 nautical miles in altitude.
It's capable of water landing means that they can now be dragged clear by that launch tower and get out into the water.
1 minute 35 seconds, pass through max Q. Skylab still flying steady on all 8 engines.
Max Q, that's where Skylab 1 had its problem.
ADS 102 engine down, launch vehicle rates are all off.
Roger. Stand by for mode 1 Charlie. Mark, you're mode 1 Charlie.
1 Charlie.
Gave you a wrong figure a moment ago. That separation
Check
should
emission
come in a
control
half a
by
minute
flight
from now.
director Phil Schaffer. A go, no go for staging. Given a go for staging.
Houston, your go for staging, you're looking good.
Staging is the separation of the first stage.
Mark
of the
units 6 seconds. 21 nautical miles in altitude, 20 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 5,947 feet per second. Coming up now on staging.
Retro rockets on the first stage go off. That's a bright, bright flame. It's too bad we can't see that.
Yeah, it's a shame this cloud is
Consider engine shutdown.
shut down. Should get
7 outboards out.
That's half of it.
I got an extra 4 daylight, Houston, and a nice staging.
Roger that.
Right on time. That's like 5,000 miles an hour.
35 seconds. Staging on schedule. Conrad White's Kerwin now riding on a good second stage engine. Coming up now on launch escape tower jettisons 4B.
About 37 miles high now and 45 miles downrange. Now that launch tower isn't needed any longer. They're right up there getting up toward orbit. They can now separate, turn around, and make a landing.
Tower jet, you start time.
Roger, tower jettison, you're mode 2.
Pete Conrad's been on this stage before, but that first one he called a very
3
smooth
minutes, 2
ride.
seconds, 47 nautical miles of altitude. The launch escape tower now ejected. Reports Conrad. His crew safety roll no longer required. 3 minutes, 12 seconds, 50 nautical miles in altitude, 84 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 8,200 feet per second.
That was a good launch.
3 minutes, 25 seconds. The first stage and launch escape tower both falling away now, headed for their own splashdowns. Meanwhile, Conrad White's Kerwin now at 58 nautical miles. Skylab continuing to climb, moving out well beyond the Earth's atmosphere.
Well, we know that things can still happen.
Houston,
Found out last Monday, a week ago, maybe.
Roger, we concur. CMC's go.
CBS News coverage of the flight to save Skylab will continue after
3
this
minutes,
pause
58
for
seconds,
station
66
identification.
nautical miles now.
This is CBS.
I'm lost. This map has a page missing. A hole in it.
We gotta get it. We'll never find it.
Come here, Peepers and Sniffer. Quick, on my tail. Ready?
Right, IHOP.
3, 2, 1, blast off!
It's that way. I can see our bright blue roof. I smell pancakes, hamburgers, knockwursts, French toast, chili. I fudge sundaes, chicken, waffles, and I even smell spaghetti and meatballs. Yummy!
Good work, Peepers. Good work, Sniffer. You'll never go wrong if you follow your senses to the International House of Pancakes.
Where there's a whole wide world to choose from.
The International House of Pancakes. The IHOP.
Kids, get your free IHOP Kangaroo at any participating International House of Pancakes. Color it, cut, and paste it up. Comes with your favorite days.
CBS News coverage of the flight to save Skylab continues. Here again is Walter Cronkite.
Good.
Pete Conrad just reported back to Houston. We're go here. It looks good in here. It was a good-looking launch from here. What?
26 feet per second now traveling Skylab.
And really ripping it up out there, about 8,800 miles an hour.
35 seconds. Skylab now 85 nautical miles in altitude. Skylab's climb for altitude now essentially complete, moving out now for downrange distance. Conrad White's Kerwin now flying almost parallel to the Atlantic below in a heads down position. We show a downrange distance of 312 nautical miles.
And as we look at the place where they just were a few moments ago out on Launch Pad B, the second time B has ever been used, by the way, Apollo 10 was the first. The deluge system still continues to steam off of the 127-foot pedestal out there. It is sending up its own little halo of what we presume to be steam from the...
Well, to the east coast of the United States, the most northerly powered flight to space for astronauts thus far. Skylab Houston, we're go at 7 minutes.
And I believe Paul White's got a word in edgewise there.
Okay, Houston, 4 good gimbal motors, and we're go at 7.
Roger, copy.
No, that was Dick Truly calling Skylab.
Mark, 7 minutes, 25 seconds, 89 nautical miles in altitude, 522 nautical miles downrange now for Skylab. Velocity now reading 16,709 feet per second.
As we come up here, about 12,000 miles an hour, actually, they're traveling with very little sensation of acceleration anymore. They've gotten just about all of it out of it that they need. going on up, though, to about 17,500 miles an hour into orbital speed. As we say, it's 7.5 hours really to catch up in what they call the M=5 rendezvous. That is 5 revolutions of the Earth. And
Roger,
then
we concur, and your go at 8 minutes.
Okay.
Mark, 8 minutes, 10 seconds. A good propellant utilization shift, says booster engineer, given a change in fuel.
About 7.5 hours to rendezvous with the higher orbiting Skylab, which is in a circle nearly 275 miles above the Earth. They'll make several phasing burns, coelliptical sequence burns, as they gradually work their way up to the same altitude, the same velocity, and find themselves traveling in the same portion of space as the Skylab is. So in about 7 hours, they should be getting their first real look at the problems, one of which they may even troubleshoot before this day is out. They have a 10-foot pole being carried with them, and if they can see the solar panel that seems to be stuck on the side of the workshop, they're going to work their way in close after they've docked and had a little dinner and see if they can't touch it with a 10-foot pole and jam it loose. Everything going well. Here's we go here. Coming 9 minutes. Short flight left.
9 minutes, 12 seconds. Skylab given a go for passage over Europe. Range safety concurs. Stand by for mode 3 Alpha. Mark, you're mode 3 Alpha.
3 Alpha.
A little bit different. We're passing over friends.
Stand by for 4 capability.
With this
Mark, you're mode 4.
high inclination of 50 degrees.
Mark, 35 seconds. That mode 4 call up from Dick Truly says Skylab can reach orbit on spacecraft power only. 83 nautical miles in altitude, 950 nautical miles down range.
So they could boost themselves if everything else failed.
Houston, 25-825.
Roger, copy.
Now the shutdown of the
There's
second
a
stage.
189.1 by 83.5.
That's what the computer tells Conrad his orbit is.
Good. Stand by.
And that's about what they were aiming for.
10 minutes, 10 seconds. S4B shut down on time. Skylab now in orbit. That was an initial reading from the onboard computer of 189 nautical miles by 83.5 nautical miles.
They're going to be, of course, confirming this and making sure everything was shaped exactly the way they want it. But as we have been listening along here, I think everybody has to agree that it went just like it was supposed to.
We confirm you're you're in a nominal orbit and you're cleared for a nominal separation sequence.
Roger.
And there it is. Roger Houston, says Pete Conrad. In another 6 minutes or so, they'll separate and they'll be flying along with their command and service module attached. And they'll look just like men going to the moon instead of paying a house call on that Skylab up there, which they, as we say, hope to find in about 7 hours from now. We're going to be following them through this interesting day. The handyman special, we heard Pete Conrad holler that out as they left the pad here, pad B, some 10 minutes, almost 11 minutes and 15 seconds ago. In fact, they're on their way. They're looking now for the next thing, which will be separation, and finally the first of the several burns that will put them up where the Skylab is, and as we say, that will take some 7 hours.
Local News Service says this afternoon.
Latest worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. Bill Deal in New York reporting. The 3 Skylab astronauts are on their way. ABC News was there at Cape Kennedy half an hour ago as Chuck Hollinshead of NASA ticked off the final seconds and the astronauts blasted off.
3. Engine sequence start. 2, 1, 0. We have launch commit and we have liftoff. The clock is running and Skylab has cleared the tower.
Skylab 2, we fixed anything. We got a pitch and a roll program.
Houston is now controlling. The thrust is going all engines.
Boy, is that a smooth ride.
That last comment from Mission Commander Pete Conrad. And so, astronauts Conrad, Kerwin, and Weitz are now in Earth orbit, and in about 2 hours they'll begin the first of 6 maneuvers leading them to a rendezvous with a Skylab space station, which they hope to repair and make livable for a 28-day mission. Now this.
In orbit. For a report, we switch to correspondent Bill Larson at the ABC Skylab News Center.
Astronauts Conrad, Kerwin, and Weitz are slowly sneaking up on Skylab following a perfect launch from Cape Kennedy this morning. A second burn of their spaceship engine some 20 minutes ago put the astronauts about 15 miles below and 300 miles behind the Skylab. There's some problem with receiving telemetry data at the ground stations in Hawaii and California, but voice communications are still good. The astronauts may have to do some seat-of-the-pants flying as they approach rendezvous with the Skylab in about 2.5 hours. There's some debris floating around up there, and the astronauts should be in the vicinity about 11 minutes before rendezvous. Space officials don't know exactly what track that debris is following, so it's something Conrad, Kerwin, and Weitz will have to keep an eye open for. Bill Larson, ABC Skylab News Center.
From 7.5 hours ago, 3 Skylab astronauts, Pete Conrad, Joe Kerwin, and Paul Weitz, rocketed into space from Cape Kennedy and began the pursuit of their space station. Now they are coming up on the crippled Skylab and are going to maneuver around it to have a good close look at all the damage inflicted on it. We expect television pictures from the astronaut spacecraft momentarily. Jules?
Over the Pacific, Frank, over the hill, the Skylab 1 command module with astronauts Pete Conrad, Dr. Joe Kerwin, and Paul Weitz is now within 35.5 miles of the Skylab space station. They have it in sight, and viewing its tracking lights, they can't very well see it too well at this moment because they're still in darkness. They'll pick it up as they come to Pacific Sunrise over Guam, and that's where we should have our first television picture from. They're orbiting at the same altitude roughly as Skylab, about 229 by 235 miles, a circular orbit over the Earth. They're in good shape. All their rendezvous burns went just perfectly, and they're set up to move in close and see just what condition Skylab is in.
And if all goes well in the next few minutes...
Skylab, a workshop in space, is brought to you by Bufferin, so fast to your headache, so gentle on your stomach. And by Tang, the orange-flavored instant breakfast drink aboard Skylab with the astronauts.
I'm a marine biologist with a PhD. I'm also an aquanaut, and there's one thing I have in common with the astronauts. When I'm on the job, I also include Tang in my menu. I'm a mother, too, and at home, my family and I drink Tang because it tastes so good. I like the fact that it contains all that vitamin C.
Have more Tang.
But what my children care most about is taste. And Tang lives up to its name. It really has Tang.
To be a mother is to know these few moments of joy. But when something as unfair as a headache interrupts, you deserve a pain reliever that goes to work faster than plain aspirin. Bufferin. This illustrates by the time most of Bufferin is going to your headache, most of plain aspirin is still in your stomach. Moments like these are too precious not to take Bufferin. It's faster to your headache, with less chance of stomach upset.
Well, the word from Mission Control in Houston is that we should be getting television pictures momentarily. And, Jules, this will be something we have never before seen.
Indeed, Frank. America's first space station, in some senses the world's first station, Russia's Salyut space station, doesn't really qualify as a full station. And the critical question is, what will Conrad, Weitz, and Kerwin find? What will Skylab look like? Is it covered by debris? Here's Pete Conrad coming in an air-to-ground now.
There's a picture.
And there's the picture. There's Skylab.
As a matter of fact, you don't have to tell me. I thought it was flying through clouds up here, and every time it fires a tax puff, I can see it, and it's just a big burst of gas out of it.
Raj. That's a firm, Pete, you're right. We are firing.
They're still a fair distance away from Skylab. No exact computation of how many miles.
And Skylab Houston, we want quads Bravo and Delta to the PSM when you can.
Just fire the tax pulse.
Roger.
Having a little trouble adjusting the camera, apparently.
Right in.
Fire another one. Man, does this shoot a big cloud out when it does that?
That's Conrad talking about the thrusters on the Skylab space station as the ground fires at the government's attitude. And we're seeing it brilliant white because it's the morning sun over the Pacific, some 8,000 miles from the United States, as they come up on it over Guam.
Guam is where America's day begins. You know, that's what the Guamanians say.
It isn't where Conrad White's and Kerwin's day began, Frank, and it was a long time ago. And you can see the picture slowly getting larger.
Did you copy my request to Bravo and Delta quads to the PSM?
Everything's on PSM, Houston.
Roger, thank you much.
Hey, Houston, how do you read now?
I read you loud and clear, Pete. How many?
Oh, okay, I'm on Fox. You'll hear it all.
Okay, good.
Some breakup here. We should mention this picture is being relayed to us by satellite from the Guam ground station.
Right now.
Roger.
Bounced from Guam to Hawaii, thence back to the United States on our own ABC lines.
But if they move in closer, it ought to get clearer.
Okay, Houston, I can already see the partially deployed solar panel. That's CS1, right?
That's what we think. In CDR Houston, in about 1 minute, we'll be starting the Swiss maneuver, and I'll let you know when we issue the command.
Okay.
The astronauts have a little more to do than to worry about the television pictures right now, although that's kind of important, isn't it?
It's a real-time engineering tool, Frank, to see what Conrad's already confirmed and the ground began to see there before they lost picture momentarily, was that it's apparently the first solar panel, what they call the SAS, the Solar Array System, panel number 1, that's partially deployed. It was not torn away. We didn't hear verification that the second panel was gone, but we think it is.
We knew what to look for, but you could recognize the windmill sticking out there.
It's a big object up there, the biggest thing anybody's ever put into Earth orbit that we know of.
There it is again. Let's have another look.
Oh, 1,000 feet.
Roger.
You guys get TV, Houston?
Roger, Paul. We do have TV, and it's kind of hard to see right now, but it's getting better as you get closer. And Skylab Houston, we've issued a maneuver to the Swiss. You ought to see it move a little bit.
Okay, I saw the tax fire. But it is, Dick. It's a very high contrast target. It's hard to get that sucker right on TV so you can see anything.
Roger, understand, Paul. And PLT Houston.
Eye opening on it? On the pot.
And PLT Houston, if you have a chance to answer, we'd like to know what the light setting is on the television. Maybe it'll help us tune ours up.
Well, switching back and forth between peak and average to try to get it, Dick.
Roger, Paul. Copy.
I'm getting the best picture on peak, which is what you got right now.
As they move in closer, you should see some of those tacks or thruster attitude control system thrusters fire. A white gas, it emerges, it's nitrogen, it emerges with a white powdery look.
Not only are the astronauts maneuvering their spacecraft, but Houston is maneuvering the Skylab, too.
Right, to place it in the best position for them as they come up on it in the rendezvous and flying formation on it.
Okay.
And we see one of the telescope mount solar array panels glistening there. The other three have disappeared momentarily at the corner, the left corner of the picture, and there they come back in again.
Well, now we're moving in closer.
Just leave it at peak lighting, and it's looking better and better to us.
As yet, of course, they're still perhaps a half a mile to a mile off. It's impossible to really assess the damage beyond Conrad's initial statement that one solar wing number 1 on the workshop, that's the facing upward in the upper left-hand corner of your picture, that one solar panel seems to be partially deployed. Indeed, you couldn't see the other one from this angle if it were there. The window of the Apollo command module here is actually cutting the TV camera off as Conrad maneuvers very carefully. We have to remember there are 4 or 5 pieces of debris in orbit with the Skylab, and they've got to be super careful not to hit any of those by accident. Mission control in Houston, we're seeing.
Solid gold.
Roger, copy.
That means the meteoroid shield is gone completely, ripped away. The solid gold was the skin covering on the workshop.
Good 15 degrees deployed. Can't see it. I'm trying to handle the damn thing. No?
And here they are, much closer.
And Skylab, we're about 1 minute from LOS at Guam. We're going to see at Goldstone at 7:57.
Roger.
That's Capcom astronaut Richard Truly in Houston talking to them.
There's the wing.
Roger, we're looking at it, Paul.
I have everything wrapped around it. See the outboard, see right now that the outboard solar panel is deployed partly.
There you see it to the extreme right.
On the other side, see some tubes of wiring sticking out. Yeah.
Roger, Pete.
Turn off the raging. Backing around here. Ooh, what's that? Oh, I've been looking at a dinky little TV screen.
And Skylab Houston, the lighting that you've got set on the TV camera right now is super. We're very close to LOS now, and you can go ahead with your photography.
So it is.
SAS panel for its whole length, right under that beam ferry. Yeah, I can see the butterfly hinge under there.
Roger.
The SAS is the solar array system panel they're talking about. Still talking about the wounded panel that has partially deployed. The other one that's believed, in fact, has been ascertained that it's missing altogether, having been lost during the boost phase back on May 14th. So the men of Skylab 2 are up there. They're doing their estimate of damage, and pretty soon we're going to see if the bill or the risks of it may be too large to pay, or just exactly what the next procedure is going to be in repairing Skylab, now that the men have rendezvoused with their orbital home. We'll be continuing now, but for now, this is Reed Collin of CBS News, Space Headquarters in New York.
CBS News, Douglas Edwards reporting on the CBS radio network. Those 3 astronaut handymen have maneuvered their handy wagon command craft up to the damaged space station Skylab within the past few minutes, and Reed Collins at CBS News Space Headquarters picks up the story from here.
As the Apollo spacecraft headed into sunlight over the Pacific, the Skylab loomed larger in the window. Soon they could see that the solar wing on the right side of the workshop was still attached but folded against the side. The micrometeoroid shield that peeled away during the launch on May the 14th apparently did interfere, as suspected, with the wing deployment. A bulge of the shield, says Conrad, and he wants to try and wedge that bulge away with a shepherd's crook the men have along with them in the command module for that very purpose. If Mission Control approves, that effort should come later in the day. Skylab 2 has rendezvoused with the big Skylab number 1, and now the repair job is just about to start. Reed Collins, CBS News Space Headquarters, New York.
The news continues in 1 minute.
.125 degrees. That one solar wing for the workshop itself is torn away completely, and another one is partially deployed. And the principal part of this discussion is we're still having air-to-ground communications problems. The principal part of this TV pass has been devoted to Conrad, showing the damage to that solar wing, attempting to retrace the events that happened that caused the damage. They're getting the word from Houston now. They've been cleared to soft dock in about a half an hour. Then they'll rest. They'll be briefed on the radio with engineers.
They've got communication. I just heard the
communication came back.
Right.
And Conrad has never wanted to keep anything to himself. I think he's enjoying showing these pictures, knowing the country is watching, too.
Whites doesn't seem to be having too much fun with the camera, though. Must be a bulky thing to operate.
And we haven't heard from Joe Kerwin. We're just 30 seconds away from losing signal as Skylab and the Apollo command module with Kerwin, Conrad, and Whites aboard head south down over the Gulf of Mexico on the 6th revolution of the spacecraft. And the events we're going to see coming up shortly, after the soft docking, they'll rest and eat dinner, and as they eat, they'll be briefed on their headsets.
We think we may have an arrival pass, although we had trouble the last time. It'll
by
be
ground control.
About to lose signal now.
Signal going out. As I say, they'll rest, eat dinner while the ground briefs them, and then the decision will be made in about an hour, hour and a half, on whether to do that SEVA or Standup Eva. It'll be Paul White's job, standing in the open hatch, the center seat of the Apollo command module, standing there to use a long series of telegraphic telescoping poles and line cutter's tools, a wire cutter, hook, a grabber, if you will, to try to remove that debris from under the solar panel, a solar wing, to see if it can be deployed, get them back 6,000 watts of power, if you will, to try to normalize the mission. It's too soon to say whether they will indeed be able to deploy that solar wing.
And, of course, the decision must be made later on about actually going ahead to open the door of the Skylab tomorrow and move on in. That should happen, according to present schedule, around 11 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow morning. And then shortly after 1 o'clock, two of the astronauts will enter the cabin. They'll be wearing the gas masks and so forth to kind of clear it out. And then, assuming that they go ahead according to schedule, about 4:30 or so tomorrow afternoon, they will return to the cabin to begin deploying the parasol or the heat shield to try to cool things down.
Frank, we probably won't be able to see them clear the debris out tonight, just because of the lack of space. Remember, Whites was so colorfully complaining a few moments ago about having to manipulate the TV camera. He's the man doing it. Conrad is being very careful. The Apollo command module, that close to the Skylab, is roughly like a 16-foot outboard boat next to an ocean liner. If he hit it, the results would be catastrophic. So he's maneuvering super carefully. Whites is maneuvering the telescoping poles, and Kerwin's watching the systems. There's no one really to handle the camera very well.
They've got a lot of room to maneuver in, haven't they, Joe? You'll forgive me for saying that. Well, apparently there will be no live television picture scheduled for the next day or so. Anyway, ABC News will be following the Skylab mission very closely, and will bring you reports on important developments as they occur. This is Frank Reynolds with Jules Bergman at ABC Space Headquarters, New York.
Skylab astronauts. The latest on the mission from ABC's Bill Larson at the ABC Skylab News Center.
Less than 100 miles now separate the Skylab astronauts from the crippled orbiting laboratory, and what may turn out to be the first major repair job by man in space. Astronaut Paul Whites has reported sighting the tracking lights on the Skylab. Earlier today, Pete Conrad reported flying over something that had a lot of ice in it and snow on the ground. Capcom Richard Truly in Houston told Conrad that's called Canada. In less than an hour and a half, the astronauts will have rendezvoused with the damaged laboratory. They'll fly around the Skylab for a close inspection before deciding if it's safe tonight to try and release a jammed solar panel. There are no plans for the astronauts to enter the orbiting laboratory before tomorrow to try and save a space project worth more than $2.5 billion. Bill Larson, ABC Skylab News Center.
From where it's being made, gathered by Network Radio's largest news staff, here's news around the world. This is John Grimes for American Information Radio in New York. For the Skylab crew, the launch this morning from Cape Kennedy was the easy part. Right now, the repair mission begins, and we switch to correspondent Merrill Muller at the ABC Skylab News Center.
Houston ground controllers have just reestablished contact with Pete Conrad's Apollo over the west coast of Australia. Conrad has soft docked with the crippled Skylab, and his crew is eating a short dinner while discussing Skylab's problems with Houston. Conrad said earlier he thought astronaut Paul Whites might be able to push a solar panel into position to increase Skylab's electrical power. But then Whites told Houston,
I can't understand you, but there's that little piece. It looks like a row of bolts that's wrapped up over the edge of the beef ferry.
Roger, we see that, Paul, and if you did not copy my last, we think we have seen enough TV here. You're cleared to turn off the TV, complete your photography if necessary, and you're cleared for soft dock.
White's description of solar bolts near the solar wing hinge could mean it has been severely damaged. But Conrad wants Whites to try a spacewalk repair tonight. Ground controllers are discussing a similar procedure. Merrill Muller, ABC, Skylab News Center.
And I'll have more news in a moment.
K. Smith in Washington.
I'm Harry Reasoner in New York. These are tonight's headlines. 3 astronauts are launched smoothly from Cape Kennedy, fly around their damaged space laboratory, and make plans for entry and repair. Elliot Richardson is sworn in as Attorney General, and Archibald Cox takes the oath as Special Watergate Prosecutor. Senator Talmadge of the Watergate Committee calls for early testimony by big-name witnesses to remove uncertainty about possible involvement by the President. And violence mars the inauguration of Hector Campara as President of Argentina. Howard?
Reports tonight from Jules Bergman on the Skylab mission, Tom Jarrell on a White House report on President Nixon's property holdings, George Watson on a political scandal British style, Bill Brannigan on the gasoline shortage in the East, Roger Peterson on a government inquiry into the advertising of deodorants, and tonight's comment on British history and shady ladies. Harry?
The Skylab astronauts were launched into orbit today. They promptly went to work inspecting their damaged orbiting workshop in an attempt to save the $2.5 billion project. ABC Science editor Jules Bergman reports on the day.
After 10 days of delay and frantic testing of devices to save Skylab, Conrad, Kerwin, and Whites were up before 4 a.m. to get ready for liftoff. They had steak and eggs with fellow astronauts and talked over the long days of work that lie ahead after they rendezvous with Skylab. Suiting up before dawn, they were relaxed. After the hectic extra training they've gone through, the actual preparations for launching almost seemed easy by comparison. Right on time at exactly 9 a.m., the Saturn 1B rocket, in its first manned launching in 5 years, roared into life.
We have launch commit and we have liftoff. The clock is running and Skylab has cleared the tower.
Tower in Houston, Skylab 2. We fix anything. We got a pitch and a roll program.
The liftoff was smooth, and it disappeared into the clouds, performing exactly as the flight plan called for. 10 minutes later, when both stages shut down, the 3 astronauts had been injected into a good orbit. 7.5 hours later, after a series of engine burns on their Apollo command ship, the 3 astronauts rendezvoused with the damaged Skylab. They came up on it over Guam and rapidly closed in to fly formation so they could pin down the damage to the space station. They were able to pick out immediately that one solar wing from the workshop had been ripped off with nothing left but wires. The other solar wing was partially deployed, blocked from full deployment by debris from the meteoroid shield that had been ripped off during the launching of Skylab 11 days ago. Maneuvering the Apollo in and around the space station, Commander Pete Conrad assessed the damage.
It looks like the meteoroid shield at the upper vent panel on the SAS wing has wrapped around it just slightly.
After the initial damage assessment, Conrad was given the okay to dock with Skylab. The 3 astronauts will then eat and, with engineers on the ground, plan out what they have to do next. Later tonight they'll dock, and astronaut Paul Whites, with the Apollo hatch open, will shoot close-up pictures and attempt to free the solar wing if it's possible to get more power. Tomorrow they'll try to deploy the thermal umbrella to cool off the overheated space station. And then we'll begin to know whether Skylab can be salvaged. This is Jules Bergman at ABC Space Headquarters. We'll have today's Watergate developments in a moment.
Skylab astronauts have a provisional go from ground control for a stand-up spacewalk by Paul Whites to try to fix the problems on the space workshop. The plan is for Whites to stand leaning out of the command ship hatch while Pete Conrad flies in close formation with the Skylab. Whites then may use one of 3 procedures, possibly a long-handled kind of shepherd's crook, to free the damaged solar wing on Skylab from the debris jamming it.
As the astronauts completed their rendezvous with the Skylab, they told ground control about the status of the solar wings damaged when that meteorite shield tore loose as Skylab was launched.
If you suspected solar wing 2, right? 2 is gone. Completely off the bird. Solar wing 1 is in fact partially deployed, and the reason that you've got different readings, not symmetric between your 3 solar panels, is there's a bulge of meteorite shield underneath it in the middle, and it looks to be holding it down. I think that we can take care of that with the SEVA.
That reference to SEVA means the spacewalk that may be coming up shortly.
Holding down the solar wing panel remaining on the workshop. White's tried everything, the hook, the shears, and even profanity, but the wing remains locked in by the accident that happened during liftoff 11 days ago.
Yeah, we're going to have to give up on it, but I really feel bad because it's just one little tiny old half-inch strap. But boy, did it rivet itself to the side of that thing. Hey, Dick.
Roger, go ahead.
Well, what it is a piece of angle where the sections of meteoroid shield are put. It runs right down next to it. It's wrapped around it just below the uppermost vent module. And it's wrapped around it over the rivet lines over a length of about 2.5 feet. And that beam does not bend, and I can't budge that strap. This little strap that's wrapped around it. Where's the disc? Watch it, Joe. Where's the ATM? To your right. You're clear to move directly to the right. Right, okay.
By this time it's getting dark. Conrad had used a lot of fuel maneuvering his ship, and now the men have passed from Earth contact and contact. They're busy getting the spaceship back in condition to repressurize, to get out of their suits, to go back and redock, hard dock with the Skylab itself. There they'll spend the night, and this mission having failed, the next big step is the entry of the Skylab interior itself tomorrow to see how conditions are inside. But to repeat, the first big repair job, the 10-foot pole, the pruning shears, and the rest of it have failed to budge the stubborn remaining wing, the solar wing that was to have caught the sunlight and provided electrical energy for the workshop. That wing remains locked securely to the side, and apparently with the tools available on this trip, it simply cannot be budged. This is Reed Collins, CBS News, Space Headquarters in New York.
Here's the latest worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. Joe Keller in Los Angeles reporting. The Apollo command ship has tried twice and it's failed twice to link up with the Skylab space station, and tonight the 3 astronauts are still working on a solution. ABC's Merrill Muller has the latest from ABC's Skylab News Center.
What's happening, and he hasn't identified yet who is doing what. One of the astronauts is crawling through the tunnel to the jammed docking probe. At the same time, he's pulling an electrical cable with him, and he and another astronaut, and it's got to be, the two have got to be Kerwin and White, since Conrad is flying the Apollo, will rewire around a burned-out electrical motor. In doing this, they will also reset the probe itself, and then go back in the command ship through the tunnel and close off the hatch so that they can try another docking attempt in the hope that this new system of bypassing the electrical short will keep the probe where it belongs, which means retracted until they get a soft approach and a soft lock with the Skylab.
Correspondent Merrill Muller at ABC's Skylab News Center. The astronauts met with an earlier failure when they were unable to unjam a jammed solar cell wing. They said they didn't have the proper tools. Now this.
They have rested aloft. This is Reed Collins, CBS News, Space Headquarters, New York.
worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. Joe Keller in Los Angeles reporting. After failing in 2 earlier efforts, the Skylab 1 astronauts tonight successfully linked their Apollo command ship with the Skylab space station. Here's the way it sounded as Commander Pete Conrad relayed the message to Mission Control in Houston. The astronauts went through an elaborate maneuver to make the link-up. ABC's Merrill Muller at the ABC Skylab News Center tells how they did it.
While Conrad flew the Apollo, Kerwin and Weitz opened up the nose tunnel to the space. All were in pressurized suits. One of the astronauts then freed the docking probe, which was jammed open, and 2 of the astronauts rewired the ship around the bad electrical motor that kept the probe open. The tunnel hatch was then replaced, and Conrad successfully redocked the Apollo with Skylab. So they are back on a modified flight plan for a night's sleep. That modified flight plan means they may get to bed about 1:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
ABC's Merrill Muller at ABC Skylab News Center. The astronauts failed earlier to fix a jammed solar wing. They said they didn't have the necessary tools to do the job. Had they been able to fix the wing, it would have doubled Skylab's already limited electrical supply. Now this.
For hours of frustration.
The Skylab crew, after a long, hard day's work, has finally docked with the space station.
Got a hard dock out of it. Hey, way to go.
After repeated attempts to complete the docking maneuver, Commander Conrad depressurized his spacecraft, removed the docking mechanism, brought it inside, and successfully repaired it. While working on the docking probe, the forward hatch was completely opened, exposing the inside of the ship to open space. The next order of business will be to get a good night's rest. While they sleep, Mission Control will be deciding what to do about repairs to the Skylab solar panels that were not completed earlier. If those repairs cannot be made, the mission cannot be entirely successful. Art Thompson, Cape Kennedy.
7 years of...
Look at the way things went. Art Thompson at Cape Kennedy.
Starting their day with a ride into space on the Saturn I booster, the crew worked unsuccessfully for about an hour trying to repair the broken wing on their laboratory. After that failed, the decision was made to redock with Skylab and get some rest. Then more troubles cropped up. For about 4 hours, the crew made repeated attempts to dock. They were able to complete that maneuver only after depressurizing their ship, opening the forward hatch and repairing the docking mechanism.
Ann Thompson says the crew is scheduled to enter Skylab for the first time in the morning, then unfold a space umbrella to shield their damaged vehicle from the sun. A private plane crash.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Bob Walker from New York, and at this hour, the Skylab astronauts woke up about an hour ago. Commander Pete Conrad told Houston the crew slept pretty good. The astronauts had problems last night in docking their Apollo command ship to the orbiting space station, but finally succeeded after several tries. Flight controllers say the first priority now is to try and raise an umbrella over the hull of the space lab and reduce the inside temperature enough to allow the astronauts to complete the mission. Henry Dickinson.
Here's the latest worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. This is John Cameron in New York reporting. The Skylab astronauts woke up a little more than an hour ago when they got this call from Henry Hartsfield at Mission Control in Houston.
Skylab, Houston, good morning.
Hi there.
How's it going this morning? You guys rest good?
Yeah, we slept pretty good.
The 3 astronauts are getting ready now to enter Skylab. The big job today is to try to raise a sunshade to shield Skylab from the sun and lower the cabin temperatures.
CBS News, Christopher Glenn reporting on the CBS Radio Network. Skylab astronauts Conrad, Weitz, and Kerwin are up and hard at work on the problems plaguing their orbiting laboratory again. Here's the latest from CBS News correspondent Reed Collins.
They've been examining the sharp little probe with its 3 latches that refused to lock last night and prevented a normal docking with Skylab.
A few moments ago, Mission Control and the crew agreed to put the probe away for the time and press on with other work. The major task today, to enter the docking module, the airlock, and then the main shop, the workshop. They'll proceed cautiously here, wearing masks to guard against poison gas, possibly created by inordinate heat inside the laboratory. To counter that, plans are to raise a parasol from inside the workshop and spread a 20 by 24-foot thermal blanket athwart the workshop's exterior. Well, that is the first of 3 plans devised to cool Skylab, and if the first one fails, they'll try a second one tomorrow. The third plan would require de-docking, flying around in the command ship, and that probably would not be tried until the redocking problem has been worked on further, up there and down here. Reed Collins, CBS News, Space Headquarters, New York.
July 15, 1975 is the date quoted in the Soviet newspaper Pravda today for the first joint manned space venture by the U.S. and the Soviet Union. 2 Soviet cosmonauts are to be launched aboard a Soyuz spacecraft on that date. A few hours later, says the paper, 3 American astronauts will go up in an Apollo module. The 2 spaceships will be docked in orbit for a total of 48 hours, with the crews shuttling back and forth to each other's ships. We'll have the latest from Southeast Asia after this message.
Trying to solve the problem of their big space laboratory, a short while ago, Paul White started an initial probe of the laboratory, reaching into the front entrance and turning on the lights for a look around. It's cold in there, Pete Conrad reported, and he also advised that the command module where the 3 men have been living has picked up a certain amount of moisture. But he and Mission Control suggested that this would be dissipated when exposed to the much drier air of Skylab.
Whites was the first man to open the hatch to the workshop and gaze into the huge barrel, 22 feet in diameter, 48 feet long. It's that area that's been heating up during the past 12 days, and Whites issued a quick report.
Fairly quick inspection. OWS appears to be in good shape. It feels a little bit warm, as you might expect. From the 3 to 5 minutes I spent in there, I would say subjectively it's a dry heat. I guess it feels like 90 to 100 degrees in the desert. Hank, I could feel heat radiating from all around me, but in the short time I was in there, I never felt uncomfortable. I had the soft shoes and the gloves on, and nothing I touched even felt hot to me.
Within the next few hours, the astronauts plan the first of 3 efforts to correct this overheating. They'll poke a parasol through an airlock and see if they can shade their big Skylab. Reed Collins, CBS News, Space Headquarters in New York.
Noon, 3 p.m.
CBS News, Christopher Glenn reporting on the CBS radio network. Few astronauts are finding the going a bit easier today as they proceed with their repair mission in orbit. We'll have details after this. Paul Whites took a quick tour through the main portion of the damaged Skylab a little while ago and reported that it felt only a bit warm in there. He guessed it between 90 and 100 degrees, a dry heat like in the desert. Temperatures have ranged as high as 120 inside the main quarters. Later this afternoon, the astronauts are scheduled to raise a big parasol-like affair from inside to try to shield the damaged section from the blazing sun, responsible for the high temperatures and, it had been feared, the release of toxic gases from a plastic insulating material. It's reported this afternoon that the Federal Trade Commission is going to issue orders severely limiting the use of that plastic foam insulation. The material is also used as insulation in office buildings and airplanes, and traces of the poison have been found in the bloodstreams of people killed in airplane crashes involving fire, although the poisoning itself has never been blamed for a crash death. No details are immediately available on what the FTC has in mind as curbs on the use of the foam in construction. Captain Nicholas...
Reporting on the CBS radio network. The Skylab astronauts are still exploring the innards of their big space laboratory and preparing to hoist the parasol, which they hope will provide a shield against the heat of the sun. Reed Collins brings us up to date from the CBS News Space Headquarters in New York.
A short time ago, the Skylab made a descending pass across the United States from the northwest to the southeast. And we got a reminder that only one of the trio has been in space before, the veteran Pete Conrad.
We're going to go eat. It's kind of hard to get away from the windows, especially for the new boys.
Roger.
The Pacific Northwest is really tough right now. We're over what appears to be a fairly major weather system. Wisconsin with pretty good overcast clouds in the Montana region.
Within the hour, the men should be poking their parasol device out through an airlock in the orbiting workshop, hoping that will solve, at least temporarily, the problems of overheating. This is Reed Collins, CBS News Space Headquarters in New York.
FM, San Antonio, Texas. News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is George Caldwell from New York. And at this hour, Operation Umbrella is underway in space. For a Skylab report, we switch to correspondent Merrill Miller at the ABC Skylab News Center.
Astronauts Conrad and Weitz are in the Skylab workshop starting to deploy the umbrella sunshade that's expected to block off the searing heat and radiation from outer space. They have reported everything going smoothly. Astronaut Kerwin is at an Apollo window watching for the results. Kerwin has not yet started his eyewitness description to ground controllers. This whole operation is expected to take 90 minutes and is critical. If it works and Skylab cools down tonight, then Conrad's crew will have a full 28-day space flight. If the umbrella fails, and it's now called the Skylab Sunshade or SST, then the Conrad crew must try spacewalking tomorrow to rig a sail-type heat shield. Merrill Muller, ABC Skylab News Center.
Dean may not talk. That story coming up. What about
6 p.m.
CBS News, John Meyer reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Stan Martin in New York reporting. The Skylab astronauts are still working on their sunshade, and communications were reestablished with Houston about 2 minutes ago. Correspondent Merrill Muller has been monitoring the conversation, and we switch to the ABC Skylab News Center.
Astronaut Pete Conrad has just reported to Houston ground controllers that everything so far is working perfectly. The umbrella pole is 16 feet outside Skylab. It only has another 5 feet to go before the umbrella springs open automatically. If they were talking live right now, I would be able to switch live and let you hear them. But they're not talking. They are taking what they call a heat break. And Conrad is fitting the last 4-foot pole to push out the umbrella. Merrill Muller, ABC Skylab News Center.
Now this.
Here's the latest worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. Art Van Horn in New York reporting. The astronauts have been working to get that parasol set up outside the Skylab so they'll have a shield from the hot sun. For details, we switch to ABC's John Pollock at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
If everything worked right, the workshop section of the Skylab space station should be in the shade of a large rectangular umbrella right now. About 4 minutes ago, as Skylab came into the sunlight, astronauts Pete Conrad and Paul Weitz were planning to give the shaft of the umbrella a final push, releasing the spring-loaded spokes of the device. Those spokes should have stretched a 22 by 24-foot reflecting canopy over the sun side of the overheated space station. But it'll be just over 30 minutes before Skylab comes back into radio contact with the ground, and the astronauts can report on their success or failure. John Pollock, ABC News at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Now this.
Houston, Texas. The time is 8 p.m.
CBS News, John Meyer reporting on the CBS Radio Network. Center in Houston say the Skylab astronauts still in Earth orbit have begun pushing out an umbrella-style sunshade designed to cool down their damaged space laboratory. The crew, just as Skylab passed out of range of radio tracking stations, reported that the space umbrella was almost fully extended. The astronauts are due to be back within range any minute now. Now, this message.
If you want to know what it looked like when it deployed, I could see the thing sticking up, bunched in the middle, mellowed a little bit at the top and at the bottom. And when they deployed it, all 4 legs came up. The front legs, that is the forward, what's closest to the command module, came up smartly and Yes, but I'd get 30 degrees, something like that.
Okay, we would like for the CDR and the PLT to go back in the workshop and pull her in, and we'd like for you to pull as many rods in at one whack. Undo the rod brake and bring in about 3 at a time, and then remove them, and we want you to complete the procedure down through step 43 so you've done a full retraction and got the rod A configuration proper. And we're going to be doing a nominal H gauge at the end of this pass, and we want to get it in close.
Good work.
All right, so what they've decided to do is to go ahead and bring the sail, although it is somewhat wrinkled. It's almost fully deployed in its 22 by 24 rectangular shape. A few wrinkles in it, though. They're going to go ahead and bring it back in, disconnect the rods that they extended them with, pull it back in until it touches the skin of the workshop, and hopefully in this manner we'll get those 2 ribs that did not go to a full 90-degree angle to go ahead and use the tension there to straighten it out. Apparently they are going to go with this, though. They do have a good deployment. They lack a few feet, but there was some talk in the last few minutes that the temperature problem should be lessened considerably. And we'll be checking back in with you later, Ray.
Thank you very much, David. We'll talk to you a little later. Our continuing coverage of the Skylab mission. KTRH News Time, coming up on 26 minutes before the hour of 9 o'clock. We're going to...
Brake and bring in about 3 at a time, and then remove them, and we want you to complete the procedure down through step 43 so you've done a full retraction and got the rod A configuration proper. And we're going to be doing a nominal H gauge into this pass, and we want to get in.
So the construction goes up to pull in the shaft of the umbrella, as it were, and perhaps this will straighten out any of the holes that seem to be in that big 22 by 24 foot shape up there. The voice of Kerwin coming from the command module, where he has a little better view of what the other 2 astronauts really can't see, as Weitz and Conrad pull on the shaft inside the workshop itself. They're working sort of in the blind. They have put together all these sticks that they have gradually extended high above the workshop, some 20 feet. Now the instruction, as we heard it, pull the whole thing back in rather sharply, and perhaps this will fully stretch out that skin of shade that is supposed to return the normal thermal activities of the workshop and make it possible for them to live down there, because that's supposed to be their home as well. As we know, it's been 120 degrees and more in there, because back some 12 days ago, when the launch was achieved in the first minute of time, the micrometeoroid shield stripped away from that segment and has exposed the Skylab to inordinate amounts of thermal heating. They're still working away, and we're listening just in the background. Let's hear.
Pass all retracted. We do not plan to do anything more with it tonight. We're going to take a look at it. We think we've got almost a full deployment, and pulling it in will do the rest for us.
And so that is the word, the latest word from Skylab. They have the parasol out. They're not exactly sure. It looks precisely as though it does in the quick sketches made when this kind of jerry-rig thing was thought up a couple of days before launch. There are 2 more possibilities yet, including an EVA, a fly-around with yet another big shield, but that would be a couple of days hence. They're going to go with what they have. They're going to pull it down within a couple of feet, actually, of the surface of the workshop, and perhaps it will spread out there, and Mission Control will give it a look through the night and perhaps monitor some temperatures. The men undoubtedly will get back toward the command ship, though, for their rest, because they're more safe there than they are in the workshop, which they entered today. The latest in the repair job, and perhaps this, unlike the extension of the solar wing, has been a success. And perhaps Pete Conrad's launch time motto, "We fix anything," is going to prove, at least here, true. This is Reed Collins, CBS News, Space Headquarters, New York.
PM and time for CBS News. We'll see you back on the other side following news time.
CBS News, David Jackson reporting on the CBS Radio Network. Attempts by Skylab astronauts Conrad, Kerwin, and Weitz to erect a parasol sun shield over the damaged space station appears to have met with at least partial success. The details from Reed Collins at the CBS News Space Headquarters in New York.
The astronauts shoved a series of rods through an airlock in the workshop, and a parasol sunshade, some 22 feet by 24 feet, flopped into being. The astronauts are not quite certain that it looks the way it's supposed to, but Mission Control seems content to let things rest for the night.
Once we get the parasol retracted, we do not plan to do anything more with it tonight. We're going to take a look at it. We think we've got almost a full deployment, and pulling it in will do the rest for us.
Understand.
The shaft of the umbrella has been retracted now to where the shade rests nearly atop the cylinder of the workshop. The astronauts are preparing to get some food and rest. Reed Collins, CBS News Space Headquarters in New York.
We'll have more.
Network, Joe Keller in Los Angeles reporting. The Skylab astronauts have unfurled that umbrella around the Skylab space station, but they say there are still some wrinkles in the umbrella, which is designed to cool off the station. The wrinkles, however, don't seem to be causing that much concern, as we learned from this announcement from Terry White at Skylab Control in Houston.
Here in the Mission Control Center, there's a great deal of confidence that the recently deployed Skylab parasol will have a good effect upon the internal temperatures of the Skylab workshop.
Terry White in Houston. ABC's Merrill Muller at Skylab News Center reports it'll take some 2 orbits before it can fully be determined if the sun shield is doing its job. And Muller says we should know more in about 1.5 hours. Now this. Here's the latest worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. Joe Keller in Los Angeles reporting. The Skylab astronauts are currently in a rest period aboard the Apollo command ship, but they were plenty busy before that in attempts to bring the temperatures down aboard the Skylab space station. The astronauts successfully spread out an umbrella over the space station, and despite wrinkles in the parasol, Mission Control feels the sun shield is going to cool the space station off. ABC News listened as Pete Conrad talked to Skylab Control in Houston about working in those temperatures.
We bring it down 20. We ain't going to be riding any bicycles or anything, but we can get down there and at least start configuring things, and we'll just press along as best we can. If we get out, we come out. As long as the temps are coming down, I think that's great. I like to press with a normal flight plan.
Astronaut Pete Conrad, ABC's Merrill Muller at Skylab News Center says plans for tomorrow's activities will be written by the time the astronauts wake up. Now this.
Here's the latest worldwide news from the American Entertainment Network. Wally Parker in New York reporting. Astronauts Conrad, Kerwin, and Weitz had breakfast in the workshop area of Skylab this morning, are now at work in the workshop area. Commander Conrad reported this morning that the sunshade has helped bring down the temperatures in the Skylab workshop, but reported to Houston the sunshade may not be deployed just right.
Seems pretty good on the, down around the bedroom and everything, but over on the right-hand side of the sail where the sail looked a little squeezed, the wall temps are still a little high. I don't know, we may have some local hotspots up there, but by and large it seems to be coming down quite a bit.
Conrad got up earlier than planned this morning. He said he, Kerwin, and Weitz wanted to get back on their time schedule. ABC's Merrill Muller reports that the main item of work for the astronauts today will be to activate the solar telescope. At the ABC Skylab News Center, Muller says the telescope should give the astronauts the best view of the sun man has ever had.
CBS News. Neil Strasser reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Are taking care of their housekeeping chores this afternoon. Later on, they'll activate Skylab's solar telescope. ABC's Merrill Muller says that should give man the best view of the sun he's ever had. In Jones.